Good day. My name is Sandeep Hira. Today, I will start a YouTube channel titled Decolonizing the Mind, the Final Frontier of Colonialism. In this series of video podcasts, I will explain how to view the world from a decolonial point of view. And this decolonial point of view is based on a theoretical framework called Decolonizing the Mind. And it is based on a book that I've published at the beginning of this year. This first episode is somewhat longer than the regular length of 15 to 20 minutes because I will start with explaining the background of the podcast series. And then I will go into the first episode that is titled How Will the War in Palestine End? Is it in a free Palestine or is it the prelude to World War III? Now, let me start by sharing the PowerPoint that explains and puts out the narrative. As I said, my name is Sandu Hira, but that is my pen name. My real name is Deo Baburam. I'm located in the Netherlands. I'm from the former Dutch colony of Suriname in Latin Abiyala. Abiyala is the term now for Latin Americas, the Americas. I've been a decolonial activist all my life, my adult life, and a theoretician now of decolonizing the mind. I'm the secretary of the Decolonial International Network Foundation. I've written some 25 books, and you can follow me on my website, www.sanduhira.com, and you'll see here my bio and also my journey from Marxism. I began in my activism as a Marxist in the early 70s, 80s. And my journey from Marxism to decolonial theory is recounted in an article in the Long View put out by the Islamic Human Rights Commission. And here you can get an idea of the book. You could download the table of contents, which I'll discuss in a minute. And you could download the introductory chapter also. Basically that's my bio, and I'm married to Sitla Bono for 48 years now. I'm a father of two children, Amrit and Pravini, and I'm a grandfather, the proud grandfather of my grandchild Dia, and I'm a friend to our friends. So that's my bio. Now, how do we look at world affairs? That is the theme of the podcast series. Basically, you have three theories, basic theories. One is liberalism. It's based on the concept of individualism and views capitalism at the end of history. As we know capitalism now, that will stay forever. That is what liberalism argues. Then you have Marxism based on the concept of class struggle, and that argues that the end of history is communism. Now, in Decolonizing the Mind, DTM, I argue that the basis of our analysis is mental slavery, the colonization of the mind, which has been introduced by the colonial world civilization. So I take the concept of civilization as the basic unit of analysis, and mental slavery, which has been introduced by the colonial world civilization, which is very young, 500 years, and argue that we need a new world civilization. A civilization is a collection of societies based on a knowledge base, and the colonial world civilization is based on the European Enlightenment. So we want a world civilization that does away with the horrors of the colonial world civilization of genocide and build a new civilization based on peace, love, and prosperity. Now, what are the basic core elements of decolonizing the mind? First, it is a critique of Western civilization. And the foundation of Western civilization now is the European Enlightenment. And I explain in the critique how the European Enlightenment has colonized the mind through knowledge production. So if you have a critique, obviously you need an alternative. And that alternative is the reconstruction of new knowledge and build new institutions based on new knowledge for a new world civilization, new economic, social, political, cultural institutions, international institutions. And how do we reconstruct new knowledge? We use the knowledge that was produced outside the West, because in the different civilizations, people have already thought about how to set up a just society, its economic institution, its social institution. How do you look at knowledge? So we draw on the knowledge of those civilizations, but we look also at decolonial knowledge that has been produced in the West as a protest, as a struggle against colonialism, and combine that with creativity and imagination to create new knowledge. And the purpose of is not only to understand the world we live in, but also to transform that world. So this theory, I've been working on it for 12 years, and try to build a comprehensive, coherent, and integral framework. Comprehensive meaning that it covers the different segments of knowledge, economic theory, political theory, mathematics, etc. And coherent means that it has a foundation, and the different theories are coherent because they are logically connected to each other. And it is integral because it takes a basic concept. In my case, it is mental slavery and civilization as basic concept. I've been working for it for the last 12 years and published it on January the 15th. It has 600 pages. And if you look at the content of it, it develops first the idea how are we at this moment in knowledge production that we get the rise of decolonial theory. I go very deep into the European Enlightenment and its two main philosophies, liberalism and Marxism. Then I discuss the concept of mental slavery, the concept of civilization, and how the colonization of the mind has taken place. And then I go to the basis of every civilization, which is epistemology. Epistemology is a theory of knowledge. What is knowledge and how is knowledge constructed? So I go into the Eurocentric epistemology and explain what DTM epistemology, decolonizing the epistemology, will look like, and what the alternative is for the knowledge base of knowledge of the European Enlightenment. Then I argue that the European Enlightenment introduced not only European Enlightenment, but colonialism introduced the concept of racism, of superiority and inferiority of people, and I explain how it took three forms: superiority, inferiority based on theology, based on biology, and based on culture. And I also discuss other theories of racism. And then I go into decolonizing mathematics and the natural science. People think that you can't decolonize one and one is two, but as I argue in the book, based on work of many other mathematicians, I conclude that it's definitely possible. And then the concept of civilization I developed extensively in the chapter 8 on decolonizing world history, looking into the foundation of Western civilization, and take a few examples of how to look at world history, the African roots of Western civilization, and Nazism and the Jewish Holocaust in Western civilization, and colonial genocides. Then I take 4 disciplines: economic theory, social theory, cultural theory, and political theory, and explain the Eurocentric foundation and the alternative in decolonizing the mind. And I conclude with the question how to move forward, how to imagine a new world civilization. Are we on the verge of a horrible future with pandemics and wars and world wars and ecological disaster, or is it possible to build another better world in which we live in peace, love, harmony, and prosperity. So basically, this is the book, and you can order the book here. If you go to the Islamic Human Rights website, you have a form here where you can just order the book, and they will send it to you. Now, let's talk about the series. How have I set up the series? It's a daily podcast. Obviously, this is quite a burden, but I'm definitely willing to take that upon me. Every day at 12 a.m. Central European Time, I will upload the video in the YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel is called Decolonizing the Mind. So if you type that in, Decolonizing the Mind with Sandro Hira, then you'll find the channel in YouTube. The episodes of the series are clustered in basically themes. And the themes are more or less congruent with the title, but for example, the current theme, world affairs, is in different chapters of the book. But the coming years, I'll go into the chapters, explain them, so that even if you don't buy the book, you are able to get the knowledge for free. And with the podcast comes a PowerPoint. You see the PowerPoint here. And if you go to the website, my website, sandrohira.com, and you go to the videos, you will find that every video, if you click on it, then you'll find the image of the video, and if you click on this image, you'll find the PDF of this episode. So those who are interested in looking in the PDF can look at. So now I will focus on this first episode on Palestine, and I'll come back to Ukraine and what it means in the coming days. So this episode deals with the question: how will the war in Palestine end? Is it in a free Palestine, or are we facing the prospects of World War III, which is a horrible prospect, but this is looming, and we should be careful that the world doesn't end up in a disaster. So to understand what's going on in Palestine, you have to understand the nature of the war that is going on now. This war is a colonial war. And the colonial war started almost a century ago. It didn't start on October 7. It didn't start even with the foundation of the Zionist state of Israel. It started, in fact, in 1902, when the founder of Zionism wrote a letter to Great Britain's Ministry of Colonies, Cecil Rhodes. Cecil Rhodes was a colonialist, got immensely rich by exploiting Africa, and Rhodes got a letter from Hales where Hales said, "You are being invited to help make history. It doesn't involve Africa, but a piece of Asia Minor, not Englishmen, but Jews. How then do I happen to turn to you, since this is an out-of-the-way matter for you? How indeed? Because it's something colonial." I got this quote from the book by Hatem Bastian, which is also in the title, Palestine is Something Colonial. And the letter reveals basically what we are talking about when we talk about Israel by the founder of Zionism. He sees the foundation of a Jewish state as part of colonialism. So how did this process of colonizing Palestine, how did it evolve? It started in 1917, when the British launched an attack against the Ottomans and captured Palestine. And entering the city of Jerusalem, the British General Edmund Allenby declared, "The War of the Crusades are now complete." So what does he mean? He means that the war against the Ottoman was also a religious war, not just a colonial war. It was a religious war in which the Christians recaptured Jerusalem. So it's important to understand that if you talk about the colonial war, this specific war, in the eyes of the colonialists, and the West doesn't like to see it, in the eyes of the founder of Zionism, it is about religion and land. So how to found a religious state, a Jewish state, on land that belonged to the Palestinians. 15 years, so after Hell's letter, on November the 9th, 1917, you got a declaration by the British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour. In this declaration, the Balfour Declaration, he says, His Majesty's government would favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people and will use their best endeavors to facilitate the achievement of this object. So the British now are saying to the Jews, I'm going to help you to set up a religious state based on Judaism. Now, in 1917, 3% of the Palestinian people consisted of Jews, and they lived there peacefully. There's no specific problem of oppression or anti-Semitism. They lived there without a problem. But then the Zionists started to bring in Jews from all over the world to take over Palestinian land. Some by purchasing land, but most of them by uprooting Palestinian farmers with the protection of the British and take control of the economy with the support of capital from the Jewish diaspora. So 20 years later, in 1938, the Jewish population, the share of Jewish population had increased from 3% to 30%. I'm talking about 1938, 10 years before the founding of the State of Israel and long before the Jewish Holocaust. So the link that people make between the Jewish Holocaust and the foundation of the State of Israel is a link that is not based on facts. Now, the Palestinians revolted against this stealing of their land. There were different revolts, 1920, 21, 29, and a big revolt between 1936 and 1939. And they were brutally repressed by Jewish paramilitary forces, leaving thousands of people dead there with the active assistance of the British. Now, after World War II, colonization of Palestine that began before the Holocaust gained a disastrous momentum when Zionist paramilitary forces started a guerrilla campaign against the British army in order to establish a Jewish state. And a terror campaign where the British were hesitant to support it, and that's why the Zionists took the initiative. This terror campaign has been described, and it was basically a genocide and ethnic cleansing, expelling people from their home and the land and killing them. And then on May 14, 1948, when they proclaimed the establishment of a Jewish religious state on Palestinian land, 700,000 Palestinians were driven out of Palestine. And the houses and land were taken over by Jews who came from Europe. So people who were born and raised in New York, Amsterdam, London, Paris, they went to Palestine, steal the land of the Palestinians and their houses where the Palestinians have been living for 1,000 years. So if we go into how the response of the Palestinians were, in 1964, almost 20 years after the establishment of the Zionist State of Israel, the Palestinian Liberation Organization was formed, headed by Yasser Arafat. And they took on the task of carrying out attacks against Israel and starting the liberation movement with armed struggle. And although they booked tactical results by putting the Palestinian struggle on the international agenda, militarily they were basically defeated because Israel, a strong nation, followed them in Israel, in Jordan, in Lebanon, and they were bombed in their offices in Tunis. So they were not safe. And eventually, both from the Israeli and the Palestinian side, there was this recognition that this stalemate can't last forever. So they started negotiation, and those were concluded in the Oslo Accords of 1993 with a two-state solution, a state for Palestinians and a state for Jews. It was a political defeat because Israel never had the intention to honor the agreement. Now, even before the Oslo Accord, and with the lull in the fighting of PLO, the Palestinians from below, the Palestinian masses, began the first Intifada in December 1987. Stone-throwing Palestinians were basically the driving force, and that struggle led to the formation of Hamas as a liberation movement dedicated to armed struggle. 3 years later, in 2000, the second Intifada started as a protest against the visit of Ariel Sharon, the butcher of Sabra and Shatila, where he murdered, his army murdered with his accomplices thousands of Palestinians. And 3 years later, the Israeli settlers in Gaza were forced to leave Gaza because they were attacked by Hamas and by the Palestinians in Gaza. And December 2008, the first Israeli war on Gaza began with aerial bombardment and a ground invasion. Mind you, we are now 2023, 15 years later. Israel is again having this aerial bombardment and preparing for a ground invasion. But in 2008, they had to withdraw their troops under international pressure, which is now absent, and a ceasefire was achieved. In March 2012, the leader of the Palestinian resistance of Hamas was killed, and that led to a new round of fighting with aerial bombardment and rocket attacks. And in October, we had a next round leading to hundreds of Palestinian deaths. In July 2014, there was a 50-day bombardment of Gaza. We are now in the third week. But then there was a 50-day bombardment that resulted in 2,000 Palestinians killed. And now we have more than 7,000 killed in 20 days. In May 21, the eviction of 6 Palestinian families living in the Jerusalem neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah led to mass protests and eventually to a war that lasted 11 days. And now we have this war. So you need to understand this history to understand the question that I pose. What makes this war different than the previous wars? And my answer is, this war will end either in a total genocide of the Palestinians or in freedom. And a total genocide of the Palestinians might lead to World War III. Now, if we look at how colonial wars or the colonial wars have ended, we see that that is the result. In Abya, the indigenous term for Latin America, for the Americas, the land of the indigenous people were taken over, and they were just wiped out by a genocide. You don't have, in many countries, they don't exist anymore. They have just been killed. The land have been taken over in Canada, in United States of America, all across Americas, and there are now still in some countries like Peru or Bolivia, a sizable portion of the population being of indigenous root. But that is one outcome of a colonial war. And the other one, we know that of the decolonization wars that have taken place in Asia and Africa, it ends in freedom. And obviously, the freedom has some limited condition. It may be political independence, but not economic. But basically, it's about freedom. So now, how does the end game for Palestine look like? Is it genocide or is it freedom? Now, what we are seeing now, and what I will discuss in the coming videos, coming days, there is a war going on now, a colonial war that might end in total liberation of Palestine. If the Muslim world unites, they will recapture Al-Quds, which is the Arabic name for Jerusalem. And capturing Al-Quds means an invasion of Israel with a ground war in Israel. Now Israel is invading Gaza, but nobody thinks that Israel might not be invaded, but Israel might be invaded by Hezbollah, by Hamas, by Islamic Jihad, by fighters from Iraq, from Yemen, from Syria, from Jordan even, where a large population is Palestinian. So we might see in the coming days, weeks, and months the preparation for an invasion of Israel. Everybody thinks that Israel is the one that invades, but Israel can be invaded. I'll explain that in the coming videos, that is a possibility. For Israel itself, they have another end game in place. They have the end game is ethnic cleansing of Gaza and genocide and ethnic cleansing of the West Banks and possibly the expulsions of Arab in Israel itself. I will explain their plan in one of the coming videos of how their plan of ethnic cleansing looks like. And in their mind you, Israel is a nuclear power. In their mind, they might even use their nuclear arsenal to attack, first of all, Iran, which they see as the strongest Muslim force that is supporting the Palestinian struggle. And once that is taking on and that takes place, we might see the start of World War III. So to understand this correlation of forces, you have to understand, first of all, how the liberation movement has developed in Palestine. I gave a sketch now, but how to interpret the October 7th attack. This was qualitative different from all the other attacks with rockets because Hamas invaded the occupied territories within Israel. I'll give a detailed analysis of that attack, and I'll go into the response of Israel and the Western nations and how their response will either lead to World War III or the total defeat of Israel. And for that total defeat, you should understand what's going on in the Muslim world now. How Iran has been preparing for it, how Turkey, mind you, Turkey is the successor of the Ottoman Empire, how Turkey might regain Jerusalem, how Pakistan, Syria, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf state, how will they operate in the coming weeks, also because of the masses of their population in large numbers supporting the Palestinian liberation movement. Then very important is the response of three major powers, Russia, China, and India. And then how does the war in Palestine links to the war in Ukraine and in the future, Taiwan? And what has this to do with the decline of the West and the rise of the rest and the decline of the Western civilization and the rise of a new precursor world civilization. Now, in the next episode, I will discuss the analysis of I will provide an analysis of the Hamas attack. I will look at the vision behind it, the strategy, the plan, and how they executed the plan. And you will see here the number of the episode, and here is the number of the theme. For now, we are going to discuss only world affairs. Yeah, and the second video we'll see the number here will be published tomorrow. I also make a link between the podcast and the book, because what I'm telling you now, I've written it down. I discussed this in chapter 13 and specifically paragraph on the US stance toward Iran and Israel, where I give the facts and the analysis. And the theoretical aspects, the civilizational approach, DTM epistemology, the mechanism of colonizing the minds, you will find in that book. So in every episode, I'll provide a link to how to go further into the analysis behind the video itself. So here's the first episode of the DTM channel, Decolonizing the Mind, the Final Frontier of Colonialism. You can support this channel. You can support it by clicking on the subscribe button of the channel. You can share the channel and promote it with your friends and families and colleagues and encourage them to subscribe. You could get involved in using the videos in setting up discussion groups. And you could support this channel also financially. If you go to the website here, you'll find the different ways of getting involved. We want to set up courses, we have trainers program. You can make a donation. Here is where you find the information for it. And that is the way to get involved, and that's the way to support the channel and develop the narrative of decolonizing the mind. So this is the first video. Tomorrow I will discuss the second topic, and I hope you have enjoyed it.